Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday, July 3rd, 2024 regular council meeting. We are beginning at 6:02 p.m. At this time, I'd like to do our land acknowledgement, which we do monthly. We honor all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. We acknowledge that the ancestral and traditional lands on which we gather are land of the Blackfoot Confederacy and Treaty 7 territory, a traditional meeting ground for many Indigenous peoples, and in particular our neighbors, Siksika Nation, on whose traditional territory we work, live, and play, and on whose traditional territory we stand and where Strathmore resides. At this time, we will be moving into the public hearing. And the public hearing is for land use, confirmation of agenda first. I jumped ahead. Are there any emergent items from any of the councillors to potentially add to tonight's agenda? Seeing and hearing none, I'm looking for a motion to confirm. Councillor Wegener.
I move that council adopt the July 3rd, 2024 regular council meeting agenda as presented.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
And the motion is carried. Now we move on to the public hearing. 3.1, Land Use Bylaw, amending Bylaw number 24-14, Garage and Garden Suites. The public hearing for Bylaw number 24-14 being a bylaw to amend Land Use Bylaw number 14-11 is in session at 6:04 p.m. This public hearing is held pursuant to the Municipal Government Act, RSA 2000, Chapter M-26, and amendments thereto. Legislative Services.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. The purpose of the public hearing is to discuss Bylaw 2414, being a bylaw to amend the Land Use Bylaw number 1411. First reading of this bylaw was given during the June 5th, 2024 regular council meeting. The public hearing was advertised on June 12th. A notice was posted on the town's website. On June 12th, there was a notice in the Strathmore Times. June 19th, a notice was published in the Strathmore Times. And June 20th, it was posted on Facebook. And June 25th, it was also posted on Facebook. To date, no written submissions have been received.
Thank you. Pursuant to the town council procedural bylaw, the following rules of conduct shall be followed during the public hearing to ensure procedural fairness. No person shall address council without the permission of the mayor or chair. No person shall speak more than once or for more than 5 minutes, exclusive of the time required to answer questions from council. Respect for staff, council, and the public shall always be maintained, and any person who wishes to address council shall state and spell their name, please. The order of presentations shall be the administration, those in favor of the bylaw, those opposed to the bylaw, any other person deemed to be affected by the bylaw. Council may ask questions of the speakers after each presentation for clarification purposes, and there will be no debating the bylaw. Would administration like to present? Good evening, Kate, and welcome.
Good evening. Good evening. Today I would like to present the proposed regulation in the land use bylaw regarding garden and garage suites. Firstly, I would like to refresh some important information regarding garden and garage suites. Specifically, I would like to mention the definition of discretionary use and highlight some of the main points in this definition. Discretionary use means the use of land, buildings, or structure listed in the column caption discretionary use in each land use district appearing in this bylaw, for which a development permit may be issued at the discretion of the approving authority. Additionally, for all projects that will be developed under discretionary use, adjacent landowners will be notified and can appeal. Also, I would like to highlight some points regarding development permit and building permit. Development permit means an application for development that conforms to the land use bylaw, which may be refused approval with or without conditions by the development officer or the approving authority. Regarding building permits. Building permits are required for most major construction projects. These projects include new buildings and additions. The Safety Code Acts require that all contractors and homeowners in Alberta obtain permits prior to starting any work on building convert by the current edition of the Alberta Building Codes. Also, required plan information before starting any construction. You must submit plans with your building permit applications to your municipality or permit provider. Now let's return to garden and garage suites with our understanding of discretionary use, development and building permits. Garden suites means second accessory dwelling unit on a parcel to be used as separate accommodation that is accessory to the principal building and may be a stand-alone unit. Here you can see some examples of garden suites. The main requirements regarding garden suites. Garden suites as a discretionary use could be built in R1, R1S, R1N, R2, R2X, CR districts. And main requirements. A garden suite requires development and building permit. The land lot must be more than 400 square meters in lot area. The land lot must have an average site width of more than 10 meters. Garden suite must be located only in a rear yard. Garden suite must not exceed the height of the principal building on the same lot. And any garden suite must be separated from the principal building by a minimum 5 meters and a minimum 1.5 meters from other accessory buildings. Internal pathway must facilitate barrier-free access. A garden suite must provide a minimum 1 additional on-site parking stall. And minimum yard setbacks are required to garden suite. About garage suites. Garage suite means a second accessory dwelling unit on a parcel located above or adjacent to a garage structure. It serves as separate living space from the principal building. And main requirements to the garage suite. Garage suite as a discretionary use could be constructed in R1, R1N, R1S, R2, R2X, and CR districts. And main requirements. Garage suites require development and building permit. The land lot must be more than 400 square meters in lot area. The lot must have an average site width of more than 10 meters. Garage suite must not exceed the height of the principal building on the same lot. And internal pathway must facilitate barrier-free access. And a garage suite must provide a minimum 1 additional parking stall on the same lot. And the minimum sites setbacks are required. Additionally, I would like to explain how the step-by-step guide for creating garden and garage suite in the town of Strathmore will work if town council will approve these regulations. Step first, it's check land use district. Step second will be verified land lot size and width. Width will be applicable, Then step 3, check separation distance. It will be applicable only for garden suites. Step 4, calculate site coverage. Step 5, development permit approval process. Step 6, apply for building and utility permits. And step 7, arrange for garbage collection utility building. Also, I would like to mention the map featuring potential garden suites. However, it's important to note that approving the new regulation won't automatically lead to all 1,300 eligible property owners developing garden suites right away. And finally, our recommendation that Council take into consideration all information received at the public hearing. And thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. Does council have any questions for Kate while we have her at the podium? Councillor Mitzner?
I have one question. You refer to only one garage or garden suite shall be allowed per lot. So if you have a 100-foot piece of property, you have 4 lots. You can put 4 garden suites on?
If this lot have already subdivided? Sorry, what?
Is it per lot or per title?
Per lot, correct? Yes,
Per
it's
lot.
per
So
lot.
you would have the option, if you have the capacity to do it based on the existing dwelling, you could put 4 on there? So only 1 is permitted on 1 lot,
Yes.
even if you have 4 lots? You can't do a secondary garden suite?
Do you mean if people owned 4 different lots?
1 parcel with 4 lots, 1 title.
One title would be 1 lot.
Okay, so you have per lot, you don't have 1 per title.
Right.
You have per lot.
Per lot, yes.
So I would read that to be if you have a title that has 4 lots, you should be allowed to put 4 on there, based on the square footage of the lot.
I don't think our regulation considers that. We just consider it a per lot garden suite application. We would take it per lot, not per title. If that's something we would need to look at, we'd be happy to do so too.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Councillor Montgomery?
Yeah, thank you very much. My question just has to do with the height, and that is, do we currently restrict the height of garages relative to the house on the property?
A garage suite must not exceed the height of the principal building. It should be lower than principal building. And for each district, we have regulation of height of the principal building, and it shouldn't exceed.
Right, but if somebody wants to build just a regular garage, do we have anything that does the garage, like if I'm not talking about a garden suite, but if somebody just wants to build a garage, does that have to be shorter than the principal house or residence, I guess, on the lot?
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Montgomery, yes, there is a height restriction for accessory buildings. I believe height restriction is 5 meters for accessory building, and most commonly a principal dwelling unit is about 10 meters.
Okay. Because like I think I've seen like places around town where the garage is taller than the house. Is that like with those special, like were those allowed in some special way?
Through the chair, thanks, Councillor Montgomery. I think, you know, over the years, our land use bylaw has evolved and the districts have evolved and changed over the years, and that's probably why. Maybe an older house that was, you know, had a newer garage on the property.
I see. And could you tell me, I guess, so if, let's say somebody did have like a quite a short house and they wanted to build a garden suite that was going to be taller, they would have to come and get basically permission. Is that correct?
Through the chair, thanks, Councillor Montgomery. Yes, and that's kind of, we made it a discretionary use so that we can use our discretion in these cases where, a special circumstance might be in place.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, thank you very much for answering my questions.
Thanks.
Councillor Mitzner.
Similar to the bylaws of the City of Calgary, Airdrie, and Okotoks, do we not offer the option to have a garden suite above the garage?
It will be garage suite.
Pardon me?
It will be garage suite. If it will
Garage
be
suite, not garden suite?
garden suite, is like separate. Garage suite, it's like above garage or adjacent to garage.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Councillor
question.
Wiley.
I just want to confirm that I heard this would only affect 1,000 property owners in town. So is that about 20% of the properties in town?
I'm not sure about precise percentage of properties, but it will be only I can calculate it right now only for garden suite, and it could be constructed near 1,300 landlords. These landlords will be eligible for construction garden suites. For garage suites, it's a little bit difficult to calculate it.
Yeah, the reason I ask is to just once again confirm that this is not a blanket rezoning. This is an incremental rezoning step that just helps support citizens as developers. So I'm just trying to confirm that it's a smaller percent of the town. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much too.
Thank you, Councillor Wiley. Any further questions? Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you very much. I'm just looking to confirm the setback distance from the principal residence for garden suites. In your presentation, you said 5 meters, but on the screen, the picture shows 4 meters, and I just wanted to confirm which one's correct.
Sorry. Regarding setbacks.
Yeah, for garden suites.
One moment, please. It will be like separation between principal building 5 meter and the minimum of 1.5 meter from all other accessory building. Maybe some mistake
So it is 5 meters.
in your presentation, because I found several mistakes and I changed it. I'm so
That's
sorry.
okay. That happens. Thank you so much for clarifying.
Thank you, Councillor Langmaid. Any further questions? Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Is there anyone present who supports bylaw number 24-14 who wishes to speak? And if you do wish to speak, could you state and spell your first and last names? Seeing that we have no one. Is there anyone present who opposes bylaw number 24-14 who wishes to speak? Please come forward and state your first and last name.
Thank you. How do you do? My name is Claude Brown, C-L-A-U-D-E, last name B-R-O-W-N, and I've lived in Strathmore for about 2.5 years. I think this is a terrible bylaw. Calgary had its own blanket rezoning debacle. The citizens spoke up against it. I know that it's been stated in this meeting that this is an incremental change, but that incremental change affects the largest properties and the best neighborhoods in this town. One of the reasons that we moved to this town was because it was quiet, it was safe, it was friendly. Town council, you do a spectacular job on so many things. Don't always agree on all of your things, but most of the things you do are pretty good. This is not a good idea. First of all, you're going to take 30%, 20% of the city, and you're going to either raise that population by 33%, you're going to put rental suites in the backyards of people who will be using the laneways to get to and from their houses. So now you're going to increase the traffic on the laneways, where people can't park on the laneways when they have guests over at their house, they're going to park on the street. I live in a cul-de-sac that is very big and spacious, and I'm very happy for it. And I think that it's very nice that when people have let's say a barbecue or a house party, the street does fill up and there's lots of parking, but I don't want that perpetually in my front yard. I'd like my kids to be able to go ride their bikes without having to worry about a car passing every 2 or 3 minutes, or even less, every 30 seconds, because we've doubled the population in our area. I also think that there should be some more consideration given to the utilities that can go into those places, the safety and the security of the neighborhoods, and I don't believe it's a good idea at all. And I'm firmly against it, and I hope that you guys are too. I also want to point out that of all the neighbors' houses I knocked on this evening, not one of them knew about this bylaw change, not one of them. And I know that you advertised on Facebook, I don't know how many times, 3 times, but I'll tell you, there are other platforms too. There's Twitter, X, if you will. There's also signage you could put up. You could also do a survey to the town, which you do yearly. You have a survey that you put out asking for, do we need more of this? Do we need more of that? Would it be nice to hear about it then? But to know that the initial survey that's presented in this document was done in 2022, and 8% of the only 230-some respondents don't even live in Strathmore. That's terrible. So I would like to open the floor if you want to ask me a question, but I firmly oppose this.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Mr. Brown? Thank you.
I hope more people find out about this
Councillor,
too.
pardon me?
I said I hope more people find out about this too, because I'm sure I'm not the only one.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Wiley?
Thank you, Mayor. I do insist it's not a blanket rezoning. What was happening in Calgary was a nightmare. I think what this does is it encourages citizens as developers. It's highly, highly regulated. In fact, it's so regulated that the conservative part of me is really bothered by the amount of regulations. So it ensures that there has to be an extra parking space on the lot, which instantly reduces the number of properties. It ensures the size, the width of the property. It ensures, as Councillor Langmaid was asking, setbacks. It's very conscientious of the neighbors by considering height, privacy, quality of the buildings, beatification of the property. I guess I don't so much have a question for you, is just I agree that it might seem like it's coming on sudden, but council's been reviewing this for 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wiley.
May I?
Just so that we're all aware that in a public hearing, there's no debating back and forth. So when it comes back for second reading and potential third reading, after second reading, there can be debate among council, but not in the public hearing.
My apologies. So I guess my question then is, how would you respond to that, Mr. Brown?
May I respond, Mayor?
Sure.
Thank you. How many of you, I mean, I'm a nerd. I work in IT. How many of you watched The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? Show of hands. Great movie, right? Well, the plans for destroying planet Earth were on display for I don't know how many thousands of years, but we didn't pay attention to it, and I guess we should have. The thing is, when something is not advertised, and it's surprisingly strange that your neighbors don't know about it. The only reason I know about it is I happened to watch the council meeting on June 5th, and I knew this was coming up. I believe that this is not well advertised. Like I said, 8% of your respondents weren't even from Strathmore or any neighborhood of Strathmore, which I find very surprising. 280 respondents, or 30, based on 15,000 people seems very small. And if you're going to base a decision based on that feedback, you should think about it a little harder. I also think that safety-wise, like having 2 young kids, we lived in a condominium complex in downtown Calgary, and most of the drug deals that you watch happen outside your back door, front door, or your balcony all happen in the alleys. And I don't like the idea of people coming in and out of the alleys in masses, and you don't get any sort of visibility as to what they're doing. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Is there anyone present deemed to be affected by bylaw number 24-14 who wishes to speak? Yes, please come forward and state your name, your first name, last name.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Stefan Rainville, STEPHANE, My apologies, I'm not quite prepared for this. I just found out tonight when my neighbor was going door to door to make sure that we knew about it. my concerns are very similar to Claude's. I also moved here 2 years ago in a beautiful neighborhood. Parking, I did hear, I'm sorry, I can't see your name. The councilor mentioned that the parking has to be in the lot. The question that I do have is like, a lot of houses in our neighborhood have back alley parking, but they park in the front. So would this be considered parking on the lot? Because it is getting pretty tight where we live, and I am concerned that there will be too much traffic. So I guess that would be my questions, like, what is the parking situation?
If I can just get some clarification from administration and lead services, are we allowing questions in a public hearing?
Well, it's not really about that, but I think it was stated in the presentation, so we can restate it. I believe it's one spot per unit, so there has to be a parking spot for a garage or a garden suite.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Montgomery.
Actually, I just have another question for administration, if I could.
Okay.
So, just in light of the issue with garbage that's been kind of going on the past week, what is the plan for additional, or so let's say garden suites or garage suites? Will they have their own separate utilities as far as like, are they going to have like a totally separate bill for garbage, and will they have separate garbage cans, etc.?
Chuck, do you have an answer for that as far as how that'll be treated?
Thanks, Your Worship and Councillor Montgomery. If we can pull up that one slide that showed the process, Claudette, that would be great. We think there's going to be a couple situations that we can't predict, but step 7 on this, for garbage collection, contact the utility department and request a second bin, disclosing that it's for a secondary accessory dwelling unit. Your utility bill covers water, sewage, and garbage collection. For more information on structuring your utility bills for an accessory unit, contact the utility department. So we kind of have those basic information down. We might run into scenarios where they share a bin. Ideally, they have a separate bin, though, and they're on the same utility. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, like I did make note of that. I wasn't clear based on like how that's kind of worded, whether it would be like a separate charge or if it was still just going to be included in like the existing charge, or like basically I'm wondering if there's going to be a totally separate charge or if we're just doing like like another bin charge, let's say.
Councillor Montgomery, thanks. We're in the early processes of this. I'm not sure if we have an answer for you at this time. I think it's going to be one bill. These people are on one utility, sharing water, sharing sanitary, and then one bill.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, thank you very much for the answer.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. I believe we're now into questions of clarification from council. Any further questions of clarification? Seeing and hearing none, I will close the public hearing for bylaw number 24-14, being a bylaw to amend land use bylaw number 14-11 at 6:30 p.m. We move now to public comments. I don't believe we have any public comments. And delegations, we have the RCMP Q4 quarterly report and 24-25 policing priorities. Staff Sergeant Wilgosh, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship, Council, and the remainder of the gallery present. I'd like to thank you, Your Worship and Council, for allowing me to appear again to provide you an update with our policing priorities. This report is our Q4 report and year-end summary with respect to the priorities that we rolled out last year. I'll be brief in the summary to allow questions and further discussion with respect to the proposed priorities going into this next fiscal year, as well as a few planned activities we have in mind in this upcoming year. Our first priority for the year was a reduction of property crimes, that being break and enter from motor vehicles and theft of motor vehicles. We were seeking a targeted reduction of up to 5%, or at least to maintain our historical averages, but up to 5% from our historical averages. And as indicated before, we derived our target values by looking at what our 5-year highs and lows were and trying to look at what's in the range, especially through 2 years of artificially low crime figures going through the COVID area in 2020 and 2021. We implemented a number of measures this year to achieve those results. Specific with property crimes, our habitual offender management program has been the most, has provided us the most traction with respect to a lot of our activities. During Q4, we were monitoring 12 habitual offenders. 7 of those 12 were living in Strathmore. I can tell you through Q4, 5 of the people we were monitoring either moved or their conditions expired. 3 people who were monitoring were in custody. 1 was a result of charges and 2 as a result of other unrelated matters. So we have been finding that, throughout our checks on our offenders that we are identifying, monitoring, we are typically reducing. We work as best as we can with our intelligence partners, that being Calgary Police, adult or community corrections, adult probation, et cetera, to be aware of who's coming into our communities and ensure that they're maintaining a law-abiding lifestyle, and then we can help them do that. Throughout this quarter, our members are able to document 40 offender checks, and as I stated, with the result of a number of people moving out of the community in this program, as well as a few in custody, that's reduced some of the checks that we'd normally see on a quarterly basis. But year to date, our members conducted over 285 documented checks on persons that we were able to identify. Persons of interest program are those who we are aware of in our community, some of whom have transitioned out of our habitual offender management program and are simply just on our radar, where, again, we're aware of who is in our community, and we want to make sure that they're maintaining a law-abiding lifestyle. Our security screw program remains active at the locations identified, as you see in the report. We also rolled out Operation Cold Start this year in Q4. That program was a selected date range where our members were out in the streets checking the vehicles that were left running in driveways or in front of residences. And it created an opportunity for our members to have a discussion with vehicle owners, at least the ones they could get a hold of in contact, about the dangers of leaving vehicles left unattended, running, especially when we talk about crimes of opportunity, where a vehicle may be left running unattended, unlocked, or simply left unlocked with the keys in the vehicle. I've provided you some figures here, what was produced as a result during that date range. So we were talking between January 8th and 12th of this year. 26 vehicles were found idling with keys unlocked, 21 found with keys locked, and there was 19 interactions with owners. Some of them repeat interactions over those couple of days. What I can say, though, is comparatively from the last time we rolled out Operation Cold Start, those numbers are fairly well reduced from the figures we presented last time. I do have the graphics in front of you with regard to our quarterly production results and where the graph shows our historical quarterly highs and lows were. And you'll notice that we are down in the areas of break and enter and theft from motor vehicle in this quarter, as well as theft of motor vehicles as well. When we take a look at our Q4 results, we saw reductions in all 3 areas that we were seeking to target. Looking forward to our year-end results, I can tell you that our break and enters and our theft from motor vehicles were reduced significantly, in fact, reaching 6-year lows. Our theft of motor vehicles was slightly elevated, and as reported in the Q1 report, we did have a few habitual offenders that moved into our community. A number of vehicle theft attempts occurred. We had a bit of a spike in Q1. However, our general investigation section, our members were able to quickly identify who they were, and that group ended up subsequently leaving our community, and we saw corresponding decreases in the number of thefts going forward. Ultimately, we're trying to make sure that our public education efforts are there, our members are present in the community and well placed to ensure that they're preventing, detecting, and deterring crime. So I'm pleased to announce that while it may be seemingly mixed results, but overall I think we met and exceeded our targeted objectives for this category this year. Our road safety initiatives remain in place, and you'll see that again through regular road risk safety enforcement, the check stop program and bar walks that were complete in the community, as well as general visibility, did have a measurable effect, as we can see on reportable collisions, that both in Q4 and for our year-end results, we saw significant reductions. Again, a 6-year low in our overall reported collisions. We did see a slight increase of our injury collisions, both in Q4 and year to date. And the injury collisions that we're seeing, the majority of them were not significant injury collisions. What we can say, though, is a lot of our trending collisions, as you can see in our factors of Q4 and in these figures that I've been providing over the last few quarters, a lot of our collisions are happening at intersections, whether it's people proceeding when it's unsafe to do so, whether turning when unsafe to do so, or rear-end type collisions in the intersections. We do see a large percentage of parking lot collisions and fixed objects, just as for everyone's awareness, that's backing into a lamp post, striking perhaps a concrete barrier. Those are typically, or hitting a parked car. Those are typically low speed type of collisions, but again, it does make up quite a bit of our overall collisions. So while we do see a bit of an increase of injury collisions, we are going to be focusing on that again going forward, but overall, our overall number of collisions did reduce significantly. Our third priority for the year was also to maintain a high degree of public engagement through a number of different means. I've included a few graphics here and a couple of events that our members were able to participate in and attend. Again, our senior girls basketball team this year did extremely well. In fact, my colleague behind me he's a proud father. His daughter is on the team, and they did very well. So of course, our members, as the year before, were happy to give them an escort back into town from their tournament, and again to be present during the provincials. Our community liaison program remains in effect. In fact, we've added they were currently on the list. We've renewed a connection with with True North here in the community that supports essentially formerly known as our crisis center or women's shelter. Other programs we have in place, our capture program remains in effect. Online crime reporting is also available to residents of Strathmore. Anyone who wants to go onto the Google Play Store or whichever app store you use, you can find the Alberta RCMP app that provides you links to all of this, including crime data, the crime map, which is also still active here at Strathmore, online reporting of minor crimes, etc. 2 new programs we're looking to bring online into the next fiscal year as well is our online rave report or alert system. So it's similar to perhaps anyone who can opt into being sort of like a rural Citizens on Patrol or Citizens on Patrol or Crime Watch type of program. If we're looking for a particular vehicle or certain persons in the community that might be active or currently active, we can send out a rave alert message. People who decide to opt in can get that message, and if they happen to spot a vehicle, they can feel free to give us a call. So it's, again, a quick way that we can alert the community to potential active property criminals that might be active in our area or simply a vehicle we're looking for, and it may help with a timely alert, just say if we happen to be looking for a missing person, for example. So that's something that's coming, as well as our catalytic converter, VIN imprintation or vehicle identification number imprintation program. We've approached a number of our garages in town, so while we're not active yet, essentially the program is you're able to bring your vehicle in. The garage has agreed to imprint your vehicle identification number into your catalytic converter. So if it's ever stolen, we can identify whether or not it's lawfully possessed. It's easily identifiable if someone's tried to obliterate that VIN number that's been engraved, and or lay charges and return property to the respective owners. As we saw in Q1 last year, catalytic converter theft seems to peak in Q1. That's when people are taking their RVs out of the storage lots and have noticed that at some point in time while it's in storage that their catalytic converter's been stolen. I can tell you that that particular area of crime has been reduced and it's been on a downward trend. We'll knock on some wood here, but on a downward trend over this past year, but again, we're looking at trying to be proactive. Another area that I continue to support and I continue to express my gratitude towards council for supporting this program is a Watch Clerk program, which again is a huge help for helping to keep our frontline members on the road and removing those administrative tasks off their plates that they would otherwise have to do. So again, a valuable investment that the town of Strathmore is a partner in, and again, we've been seeing continued results. The remainder of the report gives you an idea of where our calls for service have been. We're pretty close to where our calls for service were last year as far as regular calls for service, and pretty close to where we were with respect to traffic related calls for service. So that is the Q4 report and year-end summary in those three areas. Overall, we've met and exceeded our targeted goals. I guess the challenge going forward is seeing if we can maintain those numbers and ensure that we're maximizing safety in our community.
Any questions from council? Councillor Peterson?
I have no questions, Your Worship. I just want to first of all apologize for stepping out to take a phone call, emergency call. But the one thing I do want to say about your reports, Staff Sergeant, is that it has made my life as a councillor immeasurably better, because lots of times constituents ask questions relevant to the exact things that you mention in the broadest possible scope of the reports that you and your team are bringing forward. It's been extremely helpful and of great comfort to the people to be able to take this public message and be able to, show them pieces of it. And I've used those reports that you have given us repeatedly to communicate with our public, and it's been incredibly helpful. And as I said, a great comfort to the community as well. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Any other comments or questions from council? Thank you very much for your report and the clarity of it, and it looks very, very promising, very good. I appreciate it.
And I suppose we're moving to the request for decision on with regard to the proposed activities going forward. This part will be very brief. I'm recommending the same priorities. The reason being is that we do see that these are the areas that seem to concern our citizens most. But also, when you implement programs and we try to seek to reduce crimes on these priorities, we want to make sure that what we've done sticks. We can't simply plant the flag of victory at this point in time and try to move on. While our activities may change and fluctuate with how we maintain these numbers or how we try to seek further reductions if possible, I do believe that these are the three areas that we've received the most positive feedback on, and what seems to be more of the drivers of the types of crimes that are largely affecting our citizens here in Strathmore.
Thank you, Staff Sergeant. I have one question from an anecdotal situation for me. Has anyone ever asked about cameras for people who go through the red lights at both the east and west entrances to town? And I've seen semis and various vehicles blow through there when I'm waiting. Has that ever been brought up, and is that something that is even feasible? I know they have it on 16th Avenue at 68th Street, but we're not a city of 1.5 million, although we have a lot of highway traffic. I'd like to get your feedback on that, please.
Certainly, Your Worship. Highway 1 through our community does obviously have a lot of traffic. I've heard complaints not only from the public, but also concerns brought forward from council in the past. I can give you just some basic experience that I had in Chestermere, where we did have photo radar and intersection cameras as well. I guess it comes down to the type of investment that the community wants to make in that program. It does come with a cost with respect to a third-party supplier that supplies the equipment, but also maintains, manages, issues the violations, and overall administers a program. There is obviously revenue that would be coming back to the community, but again, I guess it depends on the level of investment. So if it's not revenue neutral, how much is the community willing to invest? There are other ways that we can be impactful with respect to trying to increase partnerships with the Alberta Sheriffs, for instance, that also do a lot of commercial vehicle enforcement. There are enhanced programs that I can implement that's specific to Highway 16 as it runs through Strathmore, and we can find a number of ways to explore reducing the concerns with those the traffic lights on the east and west parts of the town, and going throughout the year, and we can implement other means as well, as far as traffic counts, speed counts as well, to really identify the times of day, but also how serious the problem is, and that's something that may be possible working with administration as well.
Thank you for that. CAO Scoble?
Thank you, Mayor. Just an additional comment, and perhaps the staff sergeant knows this, but of course the Trans-Canada is provincially controlled. So if the town did want those type of devices on Trans-Canada, we would probably have to interact and get approval from Alberta Transportation. So.
Thank you for that. Any other comments or questions for our staff sergeant? I imagine you're getting prepared for the Strathmore Stampede and various things that you'll have to do for that.
Yes, we are. We were just speaking about it outside of council chambers before we entered this evening, Your Worship. We've implemented planning going back at least a month now, so we're a couple months in advance. I guess to use a bit of a pun, it's not our first rodeo. So last year was fairly successful, as well as the year before. We've got a lot of interactions going on with our local vendors, as well as Ag Society and various planning meetings. We're ensuring that we're well resourced to ensure that safety levels remain high, and we're looking forward to a very positive and successful annual event.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you for your report.
Sure. If I may, if you'll indulge me, we do have a number of, I guess, historical projects going on into this next year. So I guess I kind of accidentally stumbled onto a bit of a history, but I'm into history, but stumbled on a little bit of our history as far as the RCMP providing service in Strathmore. We all know that Strathmore is the village that moved, and eventually the Royal Northwest Mounted Police established a post here in 1909. Now, excluding the dates of 1917 to 1932, when the Alberta Provincial Police provided service to the area. In fact, if you count all the days and leap years, June 27th marked 100 years of the RCMP providing service in the town of Strathmore. So going forward throughout this year, there will be a number of activities that we'll be announcing to celebrate that milestone and to identify locations where our prior detachments were located. But again, that's something of a proud milestone. I can speak for, on behalf of myself as well as our members, that we've been providing service in the community for 100 years. So again, there'll be some activities announced going through the year with that. We're hopeful that we can raise some money for some charitable groups in town with some of the activities we have planned. But again, we're proud to serve in Strathmore, and we're proud to be part of this 100-year milestone.
Thank you. We look forward to those. Once again, thanks for your report.
Excuse me, Your Worship?
Yes.
If we could just request council to motion that they'll accept the priorities as presented in the report.
Okay, thank
Please.
you. Sorry, Councillor Langmaid.
Oh, sorry, I've lost my spot.
Okay.
Oh, dear.
Councillor Peterson.
So I think that what you're asking is that council move to accept the priorities as outlined in the staff sergeant's report for this quarter, and that those priorities are the ones to be accepted by this council going forward.
That's correct, through the chair, that we presented 3 policing priorities for the 24-25 calendar or fiscal year, and that those priorities are, sorry.
We've all lost our spot.
Now, of course,
The
I've lost
council
them.
approve the 2024-2025
Yes, sir.
RCMP policing priorities for the town of Strathmore. Thank you.
Thank you for that motion. Are there any questions or comments, discussion on the motion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
And that motion is carried. Thank you very much. We move now to the item 6, consent agenda. Are there any items from the consent agenda that any councillor would like to see brought up individually and put on the public agenda? Seeing and hearing none, I'm looking for a motion then. Councillor Langmaid.
I move that council adopt the recommendations of the following agenda reports by an omnibus motion. 7.1 regular council meeting minutes for June 19th, 2024. 10.2.1 WHMB minutes regular meeting March 21st, 2024. And 10.2.2 WHMB minutes regular meeting April 18th, 2024.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
And that motion is carried. We move now to item 8, bylaws, 8.1 land use bylaw, amending bylaw number 24-14, garden and garage suites.
Thank you, Your Worship. For those who don't know me, my name is Chuck Proctor. I'm the manager of development services here at the town. I just want to say thanks to Kate, for her presentation earlier. I have a few things to add, just to emphasize that this is not a blanket rezoning by all means. I hate to use the term, but it is a red tape reduction in our eyes. Right now, we do have existing garden suites in Strathmore, and Claudette, if you can bring up that. So right now, the process to get a garden suite is folks would have to come to council for a land use bylaw amendment. Then they would need a development permit and then a building permit. With these amendments proposed tonight, where we're essentially reducing the requirement to come to council to ask for a garden or garage suite. So in the screen in front of you here, Strathmore Lakes, we have some existing garden suites. To me, it looks like they share a bin, but I think it is one service, and these have been existing for a while. So when we say there's 1,000 eligible properties in Strathmore, we don't expect 1,000 properties to be garden and garage suited overnight. I think in our eyes, if we get 5 of these, it's a success. We're finding out more and more that with housing, tiny housing and garden and garage suite, that this stuff is quite expensive. And there is a lot of regulatory hoops to jump through. So we don't think that we're going to have 1,000 of these overnight. It's not the silver bullet to our housing crisis, but it's just another option for people, to do and potentially waive that council requirement. We have heard some of the negative in that 2021 survey. That's for sure. We have a couple medium responses and a couple positive responses. Our key demographics are folks, maybe wanting to house aging parents, aging children, friends, family, that kind of thing. So these are all community members that we would be welcoming potentially to these garden and garage suites. It's, not new for Strathmore, but kind of this town-wide, strategy is new for Strathmore. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Any questions for Chuck while we have him, before we have a motion for second reading? Councillor Peterson?
The only thing I'm wondering if you'd like to speak to this is if you would, or council would like to speak to it, our mayor, as to when we embarked on this almost 23 months ago, the reason that we did that, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, thank you, council. My perspective might be different than council's, but for us, we know that there's kind of a housing crisis, a housing crunch in Strathmore. We've got a number of strategic priorities that both council has and administration has, and there's a lot of overlap in those priorities, especially when it comes to affordable housing, sustainability, town growth. So we kind of took that council priority and kind of investigated some alternative methods for housing. That was, I think, our interpretation in planning and development. So we embarked on this journey. And we did receive a really good response to that survey. We received over 200 responses in 2021, which is a really good survey result. I think I've seen surveys with 10 responses in the past. This one got over 200. So there has been a lot of engagement on that survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I might just follow up, I remember in our initial consultations and conversations and debates at this council table, a lot of it revolved around the downtown area and these older homes, big lots on big lots, and fell very much within the strategic plan of downtown densification as well, and that was a desirous process for this council to embark on this. And I really appreciate your answers, reflected council's position, and much more articulate than I could have been. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Councillor Mitzner?
I'd like to echo on Councillor Peterson's comments. To my knowledge, prior to the lack of inventory, our priority was to go forward with this for revitalization of the downtown core. Thank you.
Councillor Peterson?
I'm ready with a motion, Your Worship.
Thank you.
I would move that council give second reading to bylaw 24-14, being a bylaw to amend the land use bylaw number 14-11.
Thank you for the motion. And now that we have a motion for second reading, we can have discussion and debate on this motion. Are there any comments? Deputy Mayor Wiley.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be supporting the second reading tonight. We are, as we all know, in an affordable housing crisis. What I see as government red tape is getting in the way of development. And when I say development, most Strathmore citizens probably hear, oh no, we're going to be having multiplexes or blanket rezoning going on across all the neighborhoods in town. But actually, we would call this I would say this is a uniquely Strathmore solution. We're trying to encourage a small number of residents to become developers. And what that would mean is following a very strict zoning, they're going to have to follow things like ensuring that there's an additional parking space on every lot. The size and the width of their property already has to be able to accommodate this. There has to be backyard access through sidewalk. So I should say a pathway. We're being very conscientious of the height of the property, the privacy, the quality of the building, the beautification of the property. This is a small incremental change. When I talk to residents and they understand what it is we're proposing, I've actually only received positive feedback, and I have talked to residents from all walks of life. And what I'm hearing again and again is people saying, there is just no attainable housing. While we were doing this meeting, I just went on Facebook and saw that somebody was asking, like, what's the cost of a 2-bedroom apartment in Strathmore? And the costs are so astronomically high. We all know that there's people living in the campgrounds in town. There's people living, I just saw some people living in trailers in a residential street. There was an empty lot, and there appeared to be 3 trailers side by side with barbecues out and everything. We are in a housing crisis. We are not proposing a blanket rezoning. We are just simply taking a small incremental step that encourages citizens to be developers. So I will be supporting this motion tonight.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Mitzner, then Councillor Peterson.
I will also be supporting this, but I would like to note for the public that these properties are all owner-occupied properties, so they will be owner-occupied construction projects and not developers. I think using the word developers, you're scaring the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitzner. Councillor Peterson.
I appreciate that insight, and I just want to say that I support this bylaw. I'm grateful for the fact that council has taken almost 2 years to very, very carefully consider all the implications going forward. And I also have nothing more to say on it because Councillor Wiley covered every single point that I would have made, and I will be supporting the bylaw. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you for those comments. From my own point of view, I think the cost of it is, as far as developing a garage suite or turning a garage into a rental unit, is going to be prohibitive for a lot of people. I've seen this program start in my former hometown of Canmore. Now, they have detached garages that are being converted to suites, but theirs is a land availability problem as well as the incredibly high cost of land. And while we don't have a land availability problem, we have an incredibly high cost it's not incredibly high compared to other places, but it's still very high, a high cost for people to rent and to get into home ownership. And again, I echo Deputy Mayor Wiley's statements. We have to, when we make decisions, we look at what's best for the majority of citizens, and we have so many residents who have very few options for places to live, and this will give some options. It may allow people who are young homeowners to be able to afford a mortgage by converting a garage, or it could also help seniors stay in their homes a bit longer and have rental accommodation for younger families to get started out. And the more inventory, the more the prices for rent will start to come down. It's going to be inventory too that will help the market not be so exceedingly high. So, you know, while I understand that there may be some trepidation from people concerning this, there are a lot of checks and balances in place, and the cost of it is something that would also be another check or balance for people who want to do this. Any other comments from councillors? Councillor Langmaid?
Thank you. I won't spend too much time repeating what everyone else has said because I agree with all of it. But one thing that's been mentioned that I just want to reiterate is how this could fill the need for what I consider sort of generational housing, because we talk a lot about seniors that are looking for a place to stay with their families or living with families, but also for young folks who can't necessarily, break out of mom and dad's basement and go buy their own home or afford rent somewhere. This is one way that you could build a sense of generational housing where young folks could live in a garage suite and be able to have some independence that way. I've talked to a couple different municipalities about this, Canmore, Medicine Hat, and Cochrane, who've all implemented these changes. And I was reassured in the fact that this didn't create like a fire sale kind of deal where all of a sudden everyone wanted a garage suite and it was the hot trendy thing. Uptake was slow and steady and measured and considered, and I think I have every confidence that it will be the same here in Strathmore. Thank you.
Any further comments or discussion from councillors at home and here in person? Then we have a motion for second reading. All in favor?
Aye.
That motion is carried. Councillor Langmaid?
Thank you. I'd like to move that council give third reading to bylaw number 24-14, being a bylaw to amend the land use bylaw number 14-11.
All in favor?
Aye.
The discussion?
Not on third reading, sorry, Councillor Watt, Deputy Mayor. We have discussion after second reading, is that correct? You could ask a question before we have a vote then.
I can ask a question from council, may I?
Sure.
We've been slow and steady on this process the whole time. We haven't rushed. We've taken our time. I actually would like to ask council not to support the third reading for tonight and just give it some time for residents to be informed about the second reading and then move forward. So while I completely support the garage and garden suites bylaw, I just would like to ask council to take their time on this and just give second reading tonight, and we'll do third reading another night. So I won't be supporting the third motion.
Okay, thank you. And so we have a question from you to consider. We can't discuss and debate. We do have a motion for third reading on the floor. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor Wiley, Councillor Montgomery, did you oppose or did you vote in favor?
No, I had voted in favor before.
Okay, this is for third reading? Oh, sorry, I didn't get your aye, sorry. Okay, so we have one opposed, then Legislative Services. We have 6 in favor and 1 opposed. So the motion is carried. We move now to item 8.2, Fire Services Bylaw number 24-10, which is on page 141.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. So I'll just give you a recap. So the Fire Services Bylaw hasn't been reviewed since 2018. A major rewrite was necessary to update the fire protection and emergency response for the community. It also provides guidelines for fire prevention and outlines the responsibilities of individuals and property owners for fire safety. The Fire Services Bylaw establishes authority and responsibilities for the Strathmore Fire Department defines roles and powers of the chief and department members, and empowers the fire chief to establish rules and regulations for operations of the department with council approval. These proposed changes would bring the fire services bylaw in line with current practices and operations at the fire department. There are no financial implications, but the proposed changes will include penalties associated with fire-related offenses, which was not included in the previous bylaw. The updated fire services bylaw describes and enforces specific elements related to open burning, fireworks, fire bans, and fire restrictions. It also discusses the enforcement of environmental protection regulations as it restricts the burning of prohibited debris and necessary permits. Fire Services Bylaw 1802 was approved by Council in 2018. As part of the current practice of reviewing policies and bylaws, administration has identified this bylaw as it has no longer aligned with our current practices. The bylaw is designed to ensure the safety of the residents of Strathmore and protect properties from fires and other emergencies. It also governs the use of alarm systems, permits for open burning and fireworks, and the enforcement of fire protection measures. The bylaw seeks to establish guidelines and regulations for proper functioning of the Strathmore Fire Department and the prevention and management of fires and other incidents. The draft proposed bylaw is included in attachment 1. There's several items updated in this fire services bylaw that it would address. First, it focused on fire prevention, emphasizing fire prevention by addressing open burning, fire permits, fire bans and restrictions based on environmental conditions, fireworks use in the town, alarm systems, and it would emphasize the importance of public awareness and education regarding fire safety through programs and inspections. Second, it would establish fines, penalties that are currently missing with the existing bylaw for fire protection services, response to false alarms, enforcement of regulations, and the process for the collection of fines. It also outlined the responsibilities of the department, including their specific powers at the scene of an incident. And altogether, the new fire service bylaw addresses any inconsistencies in the existing bylaw by adding clarity and enforceability. It addresses emerging fire safety concerns and ensures bylaw continues to meet the needs of the community. So this bylaw was presented to the Committee of the Whole June 12th, 2024. At that time, there were 3 revisions noted, which have been completed in this new version. Those revisions are 16.2 was reworded to align with the town's fees bylaw as amended from time to time. 18.1 reworded to delete the reference to imprisonment. And in section A, offenses, we added BB, which is obstruct or block a fire lane or access route, which is another offense. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions, Councillor Peterson?
So I have a question that doesn't need to be answered tonight. Mainly the question is if they can meet with you, but this is from the Wheatland Society of the Arts, who runs a pottery studio, and they have questions with regards to outdoor firings. So some are pit firings, some are what is called a raku firing, which is a low temperature outdoor firing. And so I'm wondering if at some future time, if it would just, and it's not covered in here because it's such a remote entity, you know, in terms of use, but I'm wondering if they could reach out to you. It would be, you would be the person that they would reach out to discuss this with going forward.
Sure, Councilor Peterson, absolutely. If they contact me directly, I can work through the process with them to see what they need.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Councillor Mitzner.
I just have a question. Is there somewhere posted on your site or Town of Strathmore site where any individual could just go somewhere publicly to know if there is a fire ban on without having to call the administration?
Yeah, absolutely. So in Alberta, we have albertafirebans.ca, and that's the site that we drive everybody to, so it's all in one place.
So
that's
could we
all.
post
Sorry.
that Town of Strathmore on our Town of Strathmore site?
Thank you, Your Worship, Council. Yeah, we do advertise it on social, and we do go into a fire advisor or fire ban, but we could look to see if there's some banner we could put on our webpage as well, just make it a little bit clearer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitzner. Any other comments or sorry, any other questions for Chief Sturgeon? Councillor Peterson?
I would move that council give first reading to bylaw 24-10 being the fire services bylaw.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
And the motion is carried. Councillor Wagoner?
I move that council give second reading to bylaw 24-10 being the fire services bylaw.
Thank you. Now that we have a motion for second reading, we have discussion. Is there any discussion or comments? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
That motion is carried. Councillor Langmaid?
I'd like to move that council give unanimous consent to give third and final reading to bylaw 24-10 being the fire services bylaw.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
And that motion is carried. Councillor Peterson?
I would move that council give third reading to bylaw 24-10 being the fire services bylaw.
Thank you for that. All in favor?
Aye.
And that motion is carried. And just a clarification comment for council and an apology to Deputy Mayor Wiley. I did just receive word from Legislative Services that we are actually allowed to have debate on third reading. So I apologize for making you go into a question mode there. That's my fault. I apologize. Which brings us to item 9, business 9.1 on page 176. Wheatland Housing Management Body Letter of Support. CAO Scoble, you're on my list.
Thank you, Mayor. So recently the Wheatland Housing has requested a new letter of support from the town. So in response to that, and I guess with ongoing development of the project, the report before you tonight is to address that letter of support. It's formalizing some of the commitments council's made, and it's also in the past, and it's also reflecting, I guess, evolution of the project. So I won't read out the motions. I'll leave that to council. I think it's one of the longer motions I've written in my career, but background to it. You know, council's consistently shown commitment to the development of the new Wheatland Lodge, including commitment to donating land east of Kinsman Park, which is worth about $1.4 million. Capital cash requisition not exceeding $566,625, excepting for any fluctuation in the market valuation of the property. And independent of this cost-sharing formula contribution, a phase 2 environmental site assessment and preparation of a remedial action plan for $59,950 has also been completed in advance of construction. So over 3 months ago now, council authorized the payment of $463,389 to expedite design work in a timely manner on the housing management body's proposed lodge to get it shovel ready for application to future intakes of the provincial granting. Those funds were from financial stabilization. So, you know, in working with the housing body, it continues to monitor market conditions and refine project costing in real time, and the project's been developed with skilled and experienced professionals employing industry best practices. So where it's at right now is the April 2024 Class B estimate for land, design, overhead, furnishings, and construction is $53.9 million. And the total estimated cost, which includes an 11% contingency, is $6 million. So hasn't been talked about much, but contingency provision is a best practice and appropriate practice, and the amount of contingency established for this type of project is fair. Typically, it's in the 10 to 15% range. So some or all of the contingency may or may not be required during the project, and the housing body should continue to ensure diligent management by skilled and experienced professionals during construction. Completing a Class A estimate to apply for the provincial grant will further refine the cost estimate. A Class A estimate is not required to apply for the grant, but there is an old municipal government saying, the closer you are to shovel and ground, the better chance of receiving a grant. Submitting a Class A estimate with the grant application enhances the chance of the grant being awarded amongst significant competition for limited funds, as is the case with most grants. Independent of the granting process, completing a Class A estimate which will often be refined multiple times in real-time strategy, which is currently being employed prior to issuing our request for tender, is a best practice for diligent fiscal management of a project. To date, the town has committed 100% of the funds requested by the housing management body, which is 82% of the total cash allocation to the project. The balance of cash funds, which would be 18% or $103,000, independent of further contamination mitigation, would be released according to project cash flow requirements and schedules. In other words, during construction. Transfer of land title from the town of Strathmore to the housing management body would also be required prior to construction mobilization on the site. So this evening, with the letter of support, we are also recommending that the proposed capital reserve funding for the proposed 2024 capital budget amendment most closely matches the purpose of the Affordable Housing Reserve. This is again for contamination mitigation. And there are no known or proposed allocations of funding outside of the Affordable Housing Reserve in the approved 10-year capital budget. Council could direct administration to fund the requested budget amendment out of the following capital reserves. The recommended, of course, is the Affordable Housing Reserve. This would leave a residual of almost $46,000 if this was selected. Another option is the Asset Replacement or Rehabilitation Reserve. There would be $1.14 million remaining in that. Or the general municipal capital, and there would only be $36,000 residual if this was chosen. So with that, I'll leave it at that and open it up to any questions of council.
I have Councillor Peterson, then Councillor Montgomery, then Deputy Mayor Wiley.
Your Worship, with your direction, I am prepared to move the motion and then move into debate, if you're okay with that.
I think so. Once we have a motion on the floor, then we can debate and discuss it.
Sure, I just have a question from admin.
Okay.
I just want to confirm I'm understanding this correctly. So tonight's motion is proposing that we transfer almost 5 acres of land that are right on Kinsman Park for an equivalent of 1.4 million, which might end up being worth less than that if any contamination is found. So we're trading potential future parkland for potentially less than $300,000 an acre. Am I understanding that correct?
I think so. It's the land was something that was voted on by council and passed unanimously to provide that land for the lodge.
Correct. So just to clarify the question or to answer the question, so the land has been approximated at 1.4 million. There could be fluctuation in that value. So as the motion states, our cash contribution won't exceed $566,625 without subsequent council approval, excepting for any increase resulting from a lower average value. So we have appraisals on the land. It's been 2 years since those were done. So we would probably, as mentioned in the report, update those prior to. So, the value of the land is still a bit of a moving target. It could be worth 1.4 million at this point in time. It could be worth less, and it could be worth more, but we'll refine that as the transfer date comes. The capital reserve request is to manage the town's responsibilities for any contamination mitigation that we need to do there. So that's kind of separate, but it's the town's commitment to manage that as the owner of the property.
Does that help, Deputy Mayor? Okay, thank you. Councillor Montgomery, do you have a question?
No, I've just got those motions that I sent to everybody earlier today.
Okay, well, we are about to have a motion from Councillor Peterson, and then there can be discussion on that motion on the agenda item, Wheatland Housing Management Body Letter of Support.
Thank you, Your
Councillor
Worship.
Langley, do you have a question?
I do have a question, if I may. This question's for administration. Just in terms of, you mentioned that should the project move forward, we would need to transfer the title for that area of land to the Wheatland Housing Management Board prior to construction. I understand at one point in time there was a significant delay in the land titles office in Alberta, leading to significant delays for projects, and I'm wondering if, well, kind of a two-part question. One, has that been resolved? And two, if it hasn't been resolved, how can we mitigate that so that we don't accidentally, unintentionally delay construction for a delay in
I understand the land title turnarounds have been significantly reduced, but I'm just going off my own one that I, a couple of years ago in Strathmore, and maybe Councillor Mitzner is best to answer this, but I think there's instrument in place that don't delay the formality of the title transfer or I guess the minor details, but maybe Councillor Mitzner can actually answer that better.
Yeah, everything will close on time, but you won't get your actual title for 45 days after the date.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that Council rescind resolution number 085.04.23. The Council amend resolution, and I'll read it. Council amend resolution number 071.04.24 to delete, and that the design work payment is contingent on all Wheatland Housing Management Body funding partners also authorizing payment for their proportionate share of the design work. I think that motion stands alone. Am I correct?
Thank you, Worship Council. That'd be ultimately up to council, but that's the way it is written in the RFD, has three separate motions.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion on the floor considering that Councillor Peterson put on the floor. Any discussion on that motion? I have Councillor Montgomery, you wanted to talk about, I think you're going to be coming with two motions following. Did you have discussion on this motion?
Yeah, sure. I'll say something about this motion. I have great concern actually about the fact that we are, proposing to support these projects when we haven't actually even had our own administration, kind of crunch the numbers themselves and give us an idea of what the actual implications are. And then I noticed that, we are proposing to support the hospice, which, there's nothing wrong with hospice in the community, but as we all know, the Alberta government has already agreed to, has contracted to fund a hospice in town already at the Shasta Care facility up by the hospital. So I guess I'm not clear on why we would be writing to the Alberta government and asking them to support a hospice in the community when they've already given the green light to a hospice in the community. And then I'm also not clear on, given that that the Alberta government's already agreed to fund a hospice in the community, what does that mean for our own budget as far as, if we're
Worship,
proposing to support a separate hospice,
of order,
are
Worship.
we...
We have a point of order here, sorry.
Does this motion have anything to do with the hospice?
I don't believe the hospice is mentioned in this motion concerning a letter of support.
Oh, because it's the separate motion. Oh, okay. I was under the impression that the letter itself, but I guess if that's a separate motion, is that what you're saying?
I believe it's just a letter of support regarding the seniors lodge. It's just a motion to rescind the motion that was previously made. Number 8085.04.23.
Right, but aren't we proposing to write a letter of support for the lodge project?
Your Worship, my motion on the floor is simply to rescind the motion. So any debate would be on whether or not to rescind the motion.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion to rescind?
Yeah, okay. I'll save it then. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Deputy Mayor Wiley.
I have a question from admin, or to admin, sorry. Why would council or taxpayers want to take out this guardrail?
Guardrail meaning?
The contingency. What advantage is there to taxpayers to take out the contingency that we have to have a partner in this?
CIO Scoble?
Sorry, I missed the last part there, the contingency to...
Well, so we're removing a contingency that we need to have our funding partners in place. If a taxpayer says to me, why would we take out that safety, that guardrail? What would be my answer? Why is that good for taxpayers?
My understanding is we're the last municipality to commit to the funding.
So why are we
That is
taking
correct.
this out?
I believe Wheatland County and the villages have done support letters now.
Well, I should be fair about that. I'm not sure that the villages have necessarily fully committed, but they're a small percentage.
At our last meeting, they confirmed that we are the only one left to not.
So why even take this out then? It sounds like it's been met.
Well, as I introduced the report with the development of it, there's I guess formalizations as the project is developed, and there's been evolution in the project as well. So this is I guess you could say a modernizing resolution in the life of this project.
Okay, that doesn't make sense to me. So if it's been met, if the obligations have been met and we have all our funding partners in place, then why do we even need to rescind it?
Councillor Peterson?
So the best way I can answer that is that when our administration, and I believe you might have been a part of one of those meetings, Mayor, I'm not sure, but one of the things that was made very, very clear to us by the province was that they would be much more favorable to looking at this project if all of the members came together to work together without conditions in terms of of voicing their solid support for the project of building this lodge and hospice. So, and that was very definitive. And so that is why Hazard, Standard, Rockyford, County of Wheatland have all voted to put forward letters of support without condition to move the project forward.
Deputy
Okay,
Mayor.
well, I won't be supporting this motion tonight. If it doesn't do anything, if it doesn't change anything, I don't support it. And if it does change something in that it if it removes or rescinds a guardrail that we had previously put in place to protect our taxpayers, I don't support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Montgomery?
Yeah, so I feel like somebody's being disingenuous here because I believe that the title of this agenda item is letter of support. And then this all has to do with a letter of support, does it not? And I'm looking at the letter of support right now. And the first line says, the town of Strathmore would like to express our full support of the Wheatland and Area Lodge and attached hospice. So is this not a discussion about the lodge and hospice?
So through the chair, it would be council's prerogative to support the hospice or not, but I would ask that you take that comment back because it seems to be directed at me, Councillor Montgomery.
No. So no, I'm not even. I was not talking to you. I was talking to I was actually talking about Councillor Peterson. I think she's being disingenuous to try to act like this does not have to do with a letter of support for the lodge and hospice. So does this? I'm asking, I guess, council, and I'm asking, because there was a point of order.
I would like to.
Does this not have to do with the letter of support, including the hospice?
Councillor Montgomery, I would like you to change your wording. Disingenuous to me feels like you're.
Mayor, to help you out, I wrote the letter, so he should be making accusation at me.
Excuse me, did you just make a point of order, CAO Scoble, and try to stop a discussion about the hospice? I was under the impression that was Councillor Peterson that did that.
I am stating I wrote the letter that has the hospice in it. So if that is disingenuous, then that is directed at me as the author of the letter.
And Councillor Montgomery, Councillor Montgomery, I would like you to remove the word disingenuous. I think there is a far better way to word your comment than to have any kind of an accusation that someone's not providing the truth. I think you need to rephrase that and actually stop using that word when you refer to fellow councillors and possibly our CAO.
So just to be clear, okay, and I would just want to make this very clear, and I don't want anywhere. I was not talking about the CAO. I'm not talking about the author of the letter. Okay, I mean I can't make that any more clear. I'm talking about the fact that a point of order was made because I was talking about the hospice and a letter of support in favor of the hospice. Okay, and I was cut off because somebody said that this is not a motion to do with a letter of support for the hospice. This has to do with rescinding a motion. That's disingenuous to claim that this does not have to do with a letter of support for the hospice. So does it have to do with a letter of support for the hospice or not?
No.
Councillor Wegener.
So this motion here was just to rescind that, the original motion. Coming up next is a motion to approve the letter of support. It's another separate motion. And then the third motion is that that's the letter of support. So you are, all we're doing all the motion is right now is that we rescind Council Resolution 085-04-23. The letter of support and the motion will be coming up after. So that's what you're talking about is two motions away.
Well, I apologize if I'm kind of jumping the gun here. It seems like, in the agenda, it's all one thing, but I'll take, I guess I will apologize then for characterizing it that way.
Thank you. Councillor Langmaid.
Just a reminder to council and under section 21 of our procedural bylaw, we do have a process that should be followed if there is a councillor wishing to challenge the ruling of the mayor. And I don't believe that process has been followed, so I think we can move on.
I just didn't hear you, Councillor Langmaid. Could you repeat that, please?
Under section under section 21 of our procedure bylaw, there is a procedure outlined for how to challenge a ruling of the mayor when a point of order is called. And I don't believe that procedure has been followed this evening, so I think it's appropriate to move on.
Thank you for that. So is there further discussion on the motion regarding the rescinding of resolution 085.04.23? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
Aye as in you're opposing?
Yes.
Thank you.
Nay.
Thank you. I was just a little confused there. Councillor Peterson, or Councillor Wegener, sorry.
Okay, I'm ready for a motion here. I would move that council approve the town of Strathmore's funding requirement per the Wheatland Housing Management Body funding formula for the development of the new 120-unit Wheatland Lodge as per the April 2024 pro forma prepared by Wheatland Housing Management Body's consultant. Specifically that the town of Strathmore's capital cash requisition to the Wheatland Housing Management Board not exceed $566,625 without subsequent council approval, excepting for an increase resulting from a lower average value of the land appraisals than the current estimated land value of $1.4 million for the site of the new Wheatland Lodge and currently owned by the town of Strathmore. And that council direct administration to transfer the land title of the 4.93 acre parcel identified as Plan 2210023, Block 3, Lot 7 in Strathmore, Alberta, the project site, from the town of Strathmore to the Wheatland Housing Management Body in the future at a mutually agreed date prior to the commencement of construction. And that council amend the 2024 capital budget to approve up to $100,000 from the Affordable Housing Reserve and direct administration to include an additional $100,000 in the 2025 capital budget for a total of $200,000 overall for incremental costs solely borne by the town of Strathmore for contamination mitigation at the project site to meet regulatory requirements for the intended land use. And that council direct the chief administrative officer to request the Wheatland Housing Management Body to continue to develop the risk mitigation strategies presented to date, evaluate additional risk mitigation strategies, and present the results of this work to council at an appropriate time in the future.
Thank you. And did you want to speak to this at all, Councillor Wegener?
I mean, I guess part of it is I'm just looking, would like to get this approved so that we can meet our requirements and commitments to the Wheatland Housing Management Body, so we can get a letter to the government with no conditions and hopefully build the lodge, because we were talking earlier tonight about a housing crisis with the garage suites and garden suites. Well, we do have a housing crisis in Strathmore, and a lot of them are the seniors. If you go to the Strathmore overnight shelter, there are a lot of seniors there that do not have a place to live. There is a waiting list to get into the lodge. There are numerous seniors in the overnight shelter that do not have a place to live, and I think that's wrong for a municipality our size, where we can help with that. That's about all I had to say.
Thank you. And we have a motion on the floor, so we can have discussion now. But I would like to ask all of council to ensure that if you make comments or you question things or debate, that you do not question the motives or draw any kind of a negative light of councillors as far as their actions or comments. I believe that's in our code of conduct as far as our behavior. So I will turn now to discussion on this motion. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. So the first sentence here of the motion talks about Wheatland Housing Management Body's funding formula. And I guess this question would be for you, CEO Scoble, since I think you said you wrote this motion. What exactly is Wheatland Housing Management Body's funding formula for the development of the new lodge?
Well, okay, well, if you like.
Your Worship, I do have the funding sources sitting in front of me. If you would like me to read that.
If that can help Councillor Montgomery, that would be
great.
great.
No, so excuse me. I'm very familiar with what's kind of laid out as proposed funding sources, but this talks about Wheatland Housing Management Body's funding formula. And so I believe that's supposed to be based on a pre-existing agreement, is it not? And so I'm wondering, what does that agreement say?
Are you talking about the provincial agreement for how lodges are funded?
Well, the short of it is, it's the funding in the pro forma, and it's based on equalized assessment.
Yeah, that is the formula.
Does that help, Councillor Montgomery?
I can send you the sheets again that we sent out before on equalized assessment.
Sorry, so you're saying that there is an agreement that capital projects will be funded based on an equalized assessment formula?
For lodges, I believe the Alberta government has that in place.
No, I'm asking about for Strathmore and the county and Wheatland Housing Management Body. Is there an agreement in place currently that says that capital projects will be funded based on equalized assessment?
Well, my thought, Councillor Peterson.
I'm reluctant to answer the question, Your Worship, because the context is skewed. So at this point in time, Wheatland Housing Management Body operates under a provincial mandate from the Ministry of Seniors Housing, where the current lodge is funded by requisition through equalized assessment.
Thank you. I believe that's what I understand as far as the way it is funded
So
from the ministry.
what I'm asking is, has anybody on this council actually seen an agreement that says that capital project, and so I'll just for the public's knowledge, I guess, where I'm going with this. So actually, I did ask on June 12th these questions to our lodge representatives or Wheatland Housing representatives, Councillor Peterson and Councillor Wagner, because as I mentioned in my my presentation at the beginning of June, the current agreement says that prior year deficits for operating will be split between the county and the town and villages along what's called equalized assessment, meaning that it looks at the total value of properties within each municipality and then divides the cost proportionally based on those valuations. I have not personally ever seen, and so basically my point is that it's possible that this capital project that we are proposing to support, via these motions. Okay, I know we aren't to the letter of support yet, but we are talking about transferring land now, and we're talking about a funding formula. So has anybody actually seen or confirmed that, and I guess, and again, just for the public's knowledge, so in the absence of an agreement to split things based on equalized assessment, which is currently what makes Wheatland County responsible for 2/3 of the cost, okay? In the absence of that agreement, it goes based on a per capita funding model, okay? And so as a lot of people around here know, Strathmore has about a 2-to-1 ratio for population.
Councillor Montgomery, I'm just going to rule on a point of order because you're making an assumption that we're going to go to per capita funding. But if the ministry has it in place, are you thinking that some of the partners, the regional partners on this lodge project, are going to deviate from what the ministry says is the funding formula? Wouldn't that be the overarching thing that we would be following as municipalities?
So as I pointed out during my presentation, and I cited the part of the Housing Act, okay, so the Housing Act is what governs the response or the relationship between municipalities and the Wheatland Housing Management Body, okay. The Housing Act says that if the municipalities can reach an agreement, okay, then it can be done by equalized assessment. In the absence of an agreement, a pre-existing agreement, then it goes to per capita funding. It goes to a per capita split. Okay, so if my point is that if we don't have that agreement, which at this point, I'm under the impression we only have an agreement, okay, to split previous year deficits, okay, operating deficits based on an equalized assessment metric. So that means that if we go ahead with this build and we don't have that agreement in place, we will be on the hook for 2/3 of the cost, not Wheatland County. So I'm asking that, it mentions the funding formula. So I'm asking, do we actually know what the funding formula is for capital projects undertaken by Wheatland Housing Management Body?
Okay, thank you. I have your question now. CAO Scoble and then Councillor Peterson.
Well, I'm not sure I can fully answer the question, but I guess the comment I would provide is that all municipalities have consistently supported the funding formula by resolution since before I've started here. So that would imply that all the partners are agreeable to that funding formula.
To follow that, Your Worship,
I would suggest that we shouldn't, count. It would be foolish for us to get into a huge build like this and not know whether we are going to be the 1/3 partner or the 2/3 partner.
So, Your Worship.
Hang on one sec, Councillor Peterson.
I guess to further address that question, Council has also directed administration to come up with a Plan B in which the town would be the major funder with any other willing partners in the project.
If I might speak to Your
Councillor
Worship.
Peterson.
We've had repeated meetings, one of which Councillor Montgomery was at, where there were people from the Housing Ministry, Valputtock, and I forget her, Lori. Anyway, that where they spoke about the equalized assessment process and whether or not someone could withdraw from that process, and they were very clear on their response. So we are very confident in moving forward on this. There is no, when Councillor Montgomery says there is an absence of understanding, there is no absence of understanding on the part of Wheatland Housing Management Body and the municipalities, the 5 municipalities and the 2 partners. There is full understanding that they are moving forward on an equalized assessment basis. Wheatland County did ask about withdrawing. They asked that question: what would happen if a partner withdrew from the Wheatland Housing Management Body organization? The government was, and Councillor Wagner can chime in if I'm in error in any way. They were very clear that that would not eliminate them from the existing equalized assessment requisition or contribution as it stands. So I think this is not in any question in any form. It is not relevant to the conversation at this point in time, unless Councillor Montgomery is suggesting that he wants to move forward where Strathmore become 2/3 of the contribution on a per capita basis. That would definitely change things. Right now, equalized assessment is based on the funding that the partners bring in terms of tax revenue, and that's why it's called equalized assessment. And Councillor Montgomery is saying that our community should contribute 2/3 of the project. It would put us at an extreme disadvantage. He's absolutely right. But at this point in time, that is not the reality.
I'm wondering if I could add a comment here, and I know this letter of support is needed for the province, but Wheatland County, I believe, passed their letter of support, but not a financial commitment. So Councillor Montgomery has raised some concerns that maybe Wheatland County is not going to fund based on the formula that's been in existence. So Councillor Montgomery, are you then looking for a written statement from Wheatland County that they will fund based on equalized assessment?
That wasn't the question.
I just wanted to check.
I'm trying to think of an analogy here to maybe better explain this, because it seems to be kind of getting missed here. So yes, there is currently an agreement in place to split previous year operating losses or deficits along equalized assessment. That agreement only covers previous year deficits. If Wheatland Housing Management Body is expecting the municipalities to contribute towards a capital build, okay, which is not the same as operating losses, there is no agreement in place, meaning that once the process starts, Wheatland County would be well within their rights to come and say, there's no agreement in place, and we don't really feel like doing equalized assessment because we have not done equalized assessment up till now for capital projects, and we think that it should be per capita. And the default, as I mentioned, is per capita. So we would be the ones who would be, trying to get them to agree to something that it would be not in their best interest to agree to. So I'm just saying.
Thank you. I understand.
That's why I asked those questions earlier. Earlier last month, I said, has anybody seen an agreement that actually covers capital projects, okay, or contributions, that $700,000 that we're all talking, that Wheatland Housing Management Body has budgeted for their build every year, okay? There's nothing that says that $700,000, okay, is going to be done based on equalized assessment.
I understand.
That could be done based on per capita.
I think we all understand what you're saying, and you've definitely raised some concerns. I don't know how council feels. You've raised some concerns and worries that perhaps Wheatland County will not fund the proportion that they've been for equalized assessment. I'm not sure if their residents are aware of that, if that's the danger that we're in now, but you've definitely raised my alarms. CAO Scoville?
Maybe I can help with this more from a practical project point of view or a cash flow point of view. The motions before council tonight is for no new money for the project itself. Council's already committed those funds. Those funds will get the Class A estimate done for design. because the way this has been set up is the majority of the town's contribution comes from the land. So there's no new cash money tonight, excepting for the 200,000 for the contamination that's being requested. Practically, prior to construction, there would be an indication from the county whether they're funding or not. If they decide not to fund, the town isn't out any more money than it's already committed. So there's not a lot of risk that way to the town.
And just to highlight that, thank you, CA Scoble, if for some reason one of our partners chose not to fund the project to a Class A budget, we would get our money back, as would all the other partners that paid that money out.
Does that help at all, Councillor Montgomery? Or can I go to Deputy Mayor Wiley for just a brief jump in? Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, please, Deputy Mayor.
Sure. I think we have to be careful when we say it's not new money. It's just, this extra 100,000. We are tonight debating officially transferring 5 acres of land on the beautiful Kinsman Park to Wheatland Housing Management Body. That is a major issue tonight. So it's definitely worth having a significant conversation about this. This is
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. If I could add something, I was on the council that actually bought the land on the eastern side of Kinsman, and it was unused scrub land. It's not really ever been considered a part of the Kinsman Park. I mean, yeah, it's land, but at the time when we bought the property, council of that day was concerned that it would be bought, or that it was owned by developers who might turn it into townhomes. So we did originally buy it with the concept of it could be eventually developed as parkland. But then in the previous term as mayor, council voted unanimously to allocate that land, that section of land of the eastern edge of Kinsman Park. It's not, I guess what I'm saying is, it's not like we can necessarily describe it as really attractive parkland, because it's always been scrubland, and that council voted unanimously to allocate that land for the lodge project. So just a clarification there. Did you want to add into, Deputy Mayor?
Definitely. I'm very careful not to call it 5 acres of Kinsman Park. I'm calling it 5 acres of land, scrub land, on Kinsman Park. The only reason it's still scrub land is that there hasn't been a council will yet to convert it into expanding Kinsman Park. But if I were to say to council, for $1.5 million, I can get you 5 acres of scrubland in the heart of Strathmore to do your will with. I think we as council would all really listen to that. But what we're saying alternately is we're looking at giving up 5 acres of prime real estate in the downtown heart of our town. I'm not even sure if we should be allowed to do this without some kind of a land swap, something of equal value. To be honest, this really, really bothers me, and I'm very concerned that we're going to be giving up such valuable land.
I think when you use the term giving up, you have to also, in the same breath, mention that any kind of a phrase of giving up is for affordable housing for seniors in our community. And they are the ones who have helped make Strathmore the incredible place it is. They're at a time point in their life where they may need more help and care. I know some of us, I don't anymore, but some of us have aging parents. They may be in a seniors lodge like that. So I just think we should be careful of our phrasing, because it is to create a home for some of our seniors that they can afford to live in their later years. And it's not taking any more parkland, but we can talk a lot about why it was done and how we feel about it and everything. But as far as the letter of support, Councillor Montgomery has obviously raised some concerns about Wheatland County maybe not wanting to fund this based on the equalized assessment, but they might want to switch to per capita funding. And if there's a concern, I don't know if we need to consult legal as far as looking into what the ministry says as far as how projects like this are funded. But I'll turn to Councillor Langmaid and then Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have just a procedural question in terms of discussing the parcel of land adjacent to Kinsman Park. It's my understanding that there is already a resolution in place approving the town, approving the donation of that land as part of this project. Therefore, I don't believe that, I don't think that's what we're deciding tonight. I do believe that's been decided. What's being decided tonight through this resolution is purely the next step of actually transferring the title of the thing that we've already resolved to do. So if someone were to want to not choose that site, I don't think this is the motion where that would be discussed. I think that discussion would need to happen under a motion to rescind a previous motion approving that, would it not, procedurally?
I think that makes a great deal of sense. Thank you.
Sorry, if council would like, Jonathan can read out the previous land motion.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Worshiping Council. So on April 7th, 2021, Council passed resolution number 138-0421 that states that Council support the land donation, approximately 4.16 acres of undeveloped former commercial industrial property east of Kinsman Lake, to Wheatland Housing Management Body for the development of a new Wheatland Lodge, in brackets, seniors facility in Strathmore.
Thank you. So I just want to confirm that my understanding is correct, that is the resolution that has confirmed that that the town will be is intending to transfer that piece of land as part of this project. That's right?
This is formalization of that previous motion.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Langmaid, and your clarification, Jonathan. Let's go to Councillor Mitzner, who we haven't heard from for a while, and then Peterson and Montgomery.
Okay, so I trust administration and Kevin Scoble and the staff, and I believe going forward, your options are to either vote for this or against this. There's no point in wasting another 4 hours or plus. We've seen the presentations. We've heard all the same information. We as a council made a decision to go forward. We need to support our resolutions, and we need to bring this to a vote. Please and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitzner. Councillor Peterson, then Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that, as you said, we're not giving up land. In my view, we are gaining the use of a beautiful building on an appropriate space in an area that has been acknowledged for years as the undeveloped land on the east side of Kinsman Park. It's never been designated, or sorry, not designated, it's never been spoken of as a part of Kinsman Park. And this will eventually wind up being a almost $60 million asset located in this community, of which Strathmore will be a major shareholder. It will also employ a lot more people, probably more than we currently have at our existing lodge. So I think we have 43 employees at our existing lodge, and I think they're estimating 15 to 20 more, not counting the hospice. So the impetus that will give in terms of our downtown revitalization is enormous. The comfort that it will bring to seniors to be able to have access to our downtown is extraordinary. And so for me, this is building a tremendous asset into our downtown. And we've even, very much talked about the fact that in 2045, that the senior population will start to decrease at that time, and that building is well positioned to be able to accommodate all kinds of other housing. So there is a long-term plan that will accommodate this building on a currently unused space. I've lived here for 40 years. I've never seen anything other than parking on that piece of property and no initiative to develop it. In this particular scenario where this potential lodge and hospice will go, it will also clean up the land. And so that's an enhancement to the existing area as well. And so I think that is not a giving up, but a tremendous gain.
Thank you. CAO Scoville, and then Councillor Montgomery, and then Deputy Mayor.
Perhaps I can provide some clarification on the land. The way that this has been put together, council's not donating the land. Council is giving land instead of money. So if this lodge was being built on a private parcel of land that the town would have to buy, or that the project would have to buy, you'd have to buy that land, and then the town would have to give $1.4 million in cash. So nothing is being given away here. There is an equitable consideration in this.
Thank you. Okay.
And just, and also, CEO Scoville, it is conditional that the town must provide land, not for free, but that we do have an obligation to provide, excuse me, that we have an obligation to provide land.
Councillor Montgomery, further discussion on the letter of support?
Yeah, thank you. So,
Oh, sorry,
one of
yeah.
the questions sorry, what? Sorry.
Oh, sorry,
Did I go?
any further discussion? You wanted to discuss more on the motion on the floor?
Yeah, I'm still interested in finding out information about the funding formula. One of the questions that I had asked, last month was whether or not anybody on council had seen the agreement that says that we can contribute 1/3 of the value of the down payment, let's call it, in the form of a land contribution. So I'm just hoping to get somebody presumably Councillor Peterson has seen this. Can you just confirm for me that you have seen the agreement that says that we are able to, that there's an agreement in place that says Wheatland County will contribute 2/3 of the capital cost down payment, and that we are only obligated to provide 1/3 of the capital cost down payment?
So what I'm prepared to say to you, Councillor Montgomery, is that your questions have been submitted to Wheatland Housing Management Body. The information that you asked on the question was submitted in the first pro forma and subsequent ones too, I believe. And I think that at this point in time, it didn't make the agenda, but in September, we'll be meeting again, and those questions will be on the agenda at that time.
Yeah, so I just have to point out that this is the third time now that a letter of support has been sprung on us after I have asked questions and before I've gotten the answers. But so I'll ask again, please, and thank you. Have you seen any agreement that says that we are only obligated to provide 1/3 of the down payment or the capital cost?
Councillor Peterson.
So, Your Worship, because of past history, I'm very, very reluctant to answer questions from Councillor Montgomery because I never am certain of the context around it. And so that's why I've left those questions that he has asked in the purview of Wheatland Housing Management Body and their experts, because I am never sure that that what happened at our meeting where there was a 49 slide presentation where there was narratives chosen and opted for, and it became very evident that they were not the understanding of Wheatland Housing Management Body, and that previous questions that were answered by both the hospice and Wheatland Housing Management Body and the chief consultant were, I don't know what the correct term is, but they were not, they were challenged in Councillor Montgomery's slide presentation. And so I am not prepared, and when, in Councillor Montgomery's slide presentation, he said in that presentation that when he had asked me questions before that I had said, I don't know. And the reason that I have consistently said, I don't know, and I have turned those questions over to the board itself is because I am never certain of the context. I am certain of the funding sources that we have. I am certain about what our annual mortgage payments are. I am certain about the project costs and how they will all be funded. And I'm prepared to answer any of those questions, Your Worship.
Okay, so my concern is that there isn't an agreement in place that says that we are only obligated to cover 1/3. We might actually have to cover 2/3. And Councillor Peterson, you've been on the Wheatland Housing Management Body for probably, a decade now? And you were the chairperson of the Wheatland Housing Management Body for a period of time as well. And personally, I would be very interested if I was on that board in seeing the agreements that actually spell out what the town's obligation is. I'm not providing information here. I'm simply asking you if you have seen the agreement yourself. And it sounds like you haven't seen the agreement. And it sounds to me like basically Wheatland Housing Management Body has been acting perhaps like there's an agreement and has been telling the partners that there's an agreement, when there is not actually an agreement in place. And the problem with that is if the other partners who are going to have to fund more than we are based on what has been presented to us or what we've been assuming so far, that if they don't want to go that way and there isn't an agreement in place, then we will be the ones paying the 2/3. So this isn't a trick question. There's no, like I said, I'm not trying to provide any sort of information here. I'm asking if you've seen any agreement that actually spells out our actual obligation. And it sounds like you're saying you haven't. So that leaves me very concerned about what the town's actual possible obligation could be, because it sounds like nobody on this council, myself included, actually knows what that could be. I would suggest it's premature to move forward with any sort of movement at all on this project without knowing what our actual obligations will be in the end. Are we going to be paying 2/3 of that 700,000, for instance?
Councillor Montgomery, could I ask you a question? Are you? Yeah. I think you're saying, are you really concerned that Wheatland County won't fund the capital project based on equalized assessment and that they won't accept our land contribution as part of our financial commitment? Is that what you're questioning?
No, so I'm not talking about Wheatland County at all. I'm talking, this is.
But they're the major funder, right? They're the 2/3 funder, we're the 1/3.
They are the major funder because that is the assumption that everybody has been operating under. And it sounds like that we might be not actually operating under a correct assumption. So
okay.
I don't know, do we want to fund the 2/3? I mean, Wheatland County can sit there and say, oh, it sounds like the town doesn't want to fund their rightful obligation when it's, we could potentially be on the actual hook for the 2/3. So,
Your Worship,
I'm not talking about Wheatland County at all or what they want to do. I think this is pretty plain what I'm saying here. I'm saying that in the absence of an agreement, we could be walking into a situation where we are paying a lot more than we think we are going into it.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. But previously in this long conversation, you have said that we're funding 1/3 and the county would fund 2/3, and that could be switched. So.
No, I'm saying that's the assumption.
Yeah,
that's because we
no, but earlier on,
telling everybody.
Councillor Montgomery, can I just finish? Councillor Montgomery, earlier on, I don't know if council heard it the same way I did, but you had said something along the lines of, that they may not fund based on the equalization assessment, that there's no agreement in place and that they may not fund that 2/3, and it could be us funding the 2/3. So there's no other regional partner it could be than Wheatland County that you are afraid, that you have some concerns about.
Your
Okay,
worship,
so I
your
guess
worship, if I can
I'm trying
chime
to think of
in.
an analogy. I'm trying to think of an analogy to make this more clear. Okay, but all I can say
No,
is
I think we're clear.
we only have a deal to fund the losses of the previous year with Wheatland County. So it's not them bailing on their obligation. We're walking into a new deal here, okay? And we might be walking into the new deal with erroneous assumptions, and we should probably figure out what the actual situation is
I can
on the
answer to this, Your
ground.
Worship.
Okay, so when the rubber hits the road, we're not surprised to
Okay.
find out that we are on the hook for two
I
things.
under-
Not because Wheatland County's refusing to fund their part, okay? Because we
understand.
walked into a deal that we didn't know the actual the terms of. That's my concern.
I understand what you're saying. Councillor Peterson says she has an answer,
Well,
and
no,
then
I don't have an
I've got to
answer
go to Deputy Mayor Wiley after, and then Councillor Langmaid.
So I don't have an answer to Councillor Montgomery's question because I clearly don't understand what he's talking about. But what I can say is that the ministry has to sign for any capital projects which employ borrowed funds. So I'll say that again. The ministry has to sign for any capital projects which involve borrowed funds. Any municipality doesn't sign on, there is no deal. And there is no agreement that I'm aware of. There's a provincial mandate, and I don't know how many times we have to say that. The agreement is through the government of Alberta, and it is an act of the legislature. Beyond that, Your Worship, I think I'm not prepared to answer to the context that in the narrative that Councillor Montgomery has suggested, but the ministry has to sign for any capital projects which include borrowed funds.
Okay, I have Deputy Mayor Wiley next, and then oh, you're waving me off? Okay, thanks. Councillor Langmaid, and then we can go back to Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. I have two questions here. The first is to Councillor Montgomery. I'm looking here at the Affordable Housing Act under Section 7, Requisitions, subsection 2. And I'm going to read it to you because I want to make sure that I understand, because what I'm hearing you say is that by default, the Affordable Housing Act is allocated per capita unless there's an agreement otherwise. I'm going to read you this section. The municipalities requisitioned under subsection 1 may determine the basis on which the total requisition is to be shared. And if the municipalities are unable to make that determination for any year, the total requisition for each year shall be shared on the basis of the proportion that the equalized assessment for each municipality in that year bears to the total of the equalized assessments for that year of all the municipalities requisitioned. So when I read that, what I hear is that the default is not per capita as you've stated. In the legislation, what I'm reading is that the default is actually equalized assessment as we've been handling it so far. Is there another section of this act that you're reading that says per capita?
So that's referring to the requisitions, which has to do with funding the previous year's losses, not capital projects or capital things.
That's not what I asked.
Well, but I'm just pointing out that that does not address capital projects. That only refers to the losses, the operating losses. So yes, you are correct that the default for the operating losses would be equalized assessment, but that's not the case for capital expenditures.
And can you point me to the section where it says different for capital expenditures?
Well, I don't have the Housing Act in front of me, unfortunately.
All right. So what I'm hearing then, based on my interpretation of the act, and in light that we don't have a lawyer in this room, I'm hearing that it's actually the default is equalized assessment. So I'm going to move on to my second question, which is for administration. We're hearing a lot tonight, comments about, oh, this could be 2/3 instead of 1/3. This could be expensive for the town. This, kind of these types of comments. And I just want to clarify procedurally that should the worst happen and this arguably, I don't really understand the scenario that's being presented, but say the scenario that's being presented does occur and and the funding formula does change to per capita versus equalized assessment, that would require an additional approval from council for those additional funds. That's not something that we're approving a blanket on, that we're going to provide whatever money for this project, no matter what it is. We've very clearly outlined that it's for the equalized assessment portion, and if that changes, that would require an additional motion.
Yes, you're correct, Councillor Langmaid. In fact, in the beginning of the motion, it says there's no additional monies without council approval.
So we're, thank you. So
So,
then
so council's committing to land worth about $1.4 million plus $566,000 in change in the motion. And there's no additional expenditures other than the $200,000 ask for contamination mitigation without council approval.
all right, so thank you. So just to reiterate what I know, that scenario of potentially being 2/3 more or whatever it is, doesn't actually impact at all the motion that we have on the table right now, because it doesn't approve that funding. So we're arguing and debating funding that's not even being proposed tonight, which is, I would argue, out of order. Thank you.
So does that reassure you, Councillor Montgomery, the comments from Councillor Langmaid as far as what the motion actually says with the letter of support and the amounts specified?
I mean, I think it addresses the down payment, which is, as I pointed out, not a previous year's deficit. So that's why I just wanted to get confirmation that somebody on this council had seen an agreement that says that yeah, we are only obligated to come up with 1/3, so that doesn't. And yeah, I guess, you know, I agree. The motion only addresses the amount. Okay. But I mean, like, I find this frankly a bit kind of strange. And you know, like, so I'll wait. I guess that's fine. I'll wait until I bring forward my motions, I guess, to talk more about wanting some clarity on what we're getting into. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Peterson?
I'll just restate what I have stated 4 times, Your Worship, and I know how much this annoys you. There is no agreement. There is a provincial mandate, and the ministry has to sign for capital projects which involve borrowed funds. I don't know how I can be any clearer.
All right, Deputy Mayor Wiley.
Sure, if I may, I'm just going to give reasons why I'm not going to be supporting tonight's motion, if that's all right.
Sure.
So we are being asked to once again write another letter confirming our contribution to building this $60 million lodge, but also to requisition taxes eventually that will operate 120 rooms. With Wheatland Council, we will be the last dollar funder, which means that if anything goes wrong, we are the ones with the problem. Second reason I cannot support this is that we will be losing potential park space in downtown Strathmore. I've already been contacted by some citizens who are considering launching a Save Our Park movement. I'm convinced it's going to raise our taxes significantly. All I've heard from Strathmore residents in the last 3 years is concern about affordability and taxes at all 3 levels of government. And here we are talking about moving forward again with this project that's going to be raising our taxes. I mean, whether you accept the numbers or not, I've heard estimates that have not been disproven to me as high as a 10-fold increase in requisitions to Wheatland Housing Management Body. The 4th reason is there's already private seniors facility moving forward. Are Strathmore residents even aware that this private seniors residence that's going to be built by a private company and operated by our province is is already on the way. It's going to have zero risk to municipal taxpayers, and it will even have a higher level of care. And the fifth and final reason I will not be supporting this is that I keep hearing that this is going to help Strathmore residents, and for sure it is. Well, so will the Shasta Lodge. But one thing we have to be aware of is in order to fill all 120 rooms in the first few years as quickly as possible, this building is going to be quickly filled up with residents from Calgary, residents from Edmonton perhaps, and new residents to the province of Alberta. And so, yes, some Strathmore residents, maybe the 20 some that are on the waiting list, will be able to find space. But we're giving up part of Kinsman Park, or potential part of Kinsman Park, taking on an enormous amount of risk. We will be incurring increased taxes, especially in the first few years. And we will be ultimately the last dollar funder in operating this lodge. And for those reasons, I can't support this.
I would just like to say that a for-profit lodge is very different than what is run by Wheatland Housing Management Body. For-profit lodges are very different. The other thing is, as far as the lodge residents go, I believe there's a point system in place as far as getting into the lodge that would definitely factor out people coming in from Calgary, et cetera. Councillor Wagoner and then Councillor Peterson.
Okay, just with this motion, I will be supporting it because I believe the seniors in our community are the ones that built our community and are going to be the ones that are going to benefit from it. As far as the people from Calgary and Edmonton coming in, that's possible that they might be. Everything is based on a weighted system. If you are from the county of Wheatland and or the villages of the town of Strathmore, your state goes up higher. There is a waiting list of the lodge. Right now it is 26 or 28 people. That's not really an accurate number. There's a lot of people that have pulled their name off that waiting list because it is a long list. And Deputy Mayor Wiley, I do have one question. What do you, maybe I'm not smart enough to get this, but what do you mean by last dollar funder?
Thanks, I'm glad you asked. So the last dollar funder means that it's not, at the end of the day, the province of Alberta isn't going to come in and help us with any deficits in operations. If the lodge is losing money, it's going to be up to Strathmore taxpayers and the partners taxpayers to pay for anything that could possibly go wrong. And so we will be on the hook for if the capital build were to double in price, or if the operations weren't to go as smoothly as everyone wanted. Last dollar funder means we will be the ones who are responsible for making up any deficits. Our taxpayers will be.
Thank you for that. Councillor Peterson.
So just to the last point, Your Worship, in the unlikely event of the whole last dollar funder argument, we do this now. So for instance, we have a very old lodge and we have to replace the roof, which is at a considerable cost. So it is not Strathmore that is the last dollar funder. It is the members of Wheatland Housing Management Body who will cover that loss through contribution. I'd also just like to point out that with regards to the whole idea of the lodge, my understanding was that this council voted unanimously for it. So I sit in confusion in these conversations very often. You know, we sat at this table in lengthy discussions, and I heard every member of this council speak in favor of the lodge, and so I'm confused tonight. And the other thing that I would like to say is that in terms of what Councillor Wiley has said about the private seniors residents coming in, operated by the province, It's not exactly operated by the province. It's operated under parameters by the province and supported by the province for the SL3 and SL4D, which provide specialized care for those living with dementia. And we need this. We definitely and desperately need this. And that is like the existing Sagewood care, or Sagewood aged care, and the new Shasta facility that's proposed for the adjoining lands at the Strathmore Hospital site. And we desperately need that as well as the proposed lodge. We know that even with the Shasta development, with Sage Care, with our existing lodge, and with a new lodge, we will still be at a considerable disadvantage in being able to provide affordable seniors housing. So I think that this seniors lodge is congregate living. It's like today's seniors lodge. It's a different level. It is not a healthcare facility like the Shasta Lodge. So I'm very much in favor of that facility going in. I'm really happy to see it. We need it, but we also need this facility. And we've gone over those reasons why countless numbers of times. The needs assessment from 2019 shows that, and that 2019 assessment doesn't take into consideration the huge influx of population to Alberta. So the answer to this is that both are critical to future care, and additional seniors housing is needed based on the Alberta government statistics and planning. You can look at those, and so that 2019 needs assessment pointed to the very conservative estimate of an additional 400 seniors housing rooms in our area in the next 20 years. And so I think that's really important to consider. And then finally, the area where the lodge will go has never been a part of the usable Kinsman Park. It has never been a part of it. And it's really interesting, I think, and it's an interesting exercise, not for tonight, but to go back and look at the history of Kinsman Park through its ownership from the Devonian Foundation, through its dedication to this community, the care that it was given by the Kinsmen over many years, and to where it is today. And having a seniors facility, a congregate seniors living facility on that area will certainly enhance the park itself, and will certainly provide a huge contribution to the downtown revitalization in the same way that this current building has. Thank you, Your Worship.
So we do have a motion on the floor for this Wheatland Housing Board letter of support. Are there any new comments, or can we go ahead and go to a vote? Sorry, I thought this was... Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson?
Your Worship, I would move that Council authorize Mayor Fuel to sign the Wheatland Housing Management Body Letter of Support as presented in Attachment 1.
Thank you, and we have a motion on the floor for the signing of the letter. Councillor Montgomery?
All right, thank you. I will, I guess, raise the points that I made earlier about this letter of support, which includes the hospice. I'm not sure what message we're sending the province when, as I mentioned before, they've already agreed and contracted to fund a hospice in our community. I understand that Wheatland Higher Area Hospice and Wheatland Housing have, for reasons, married these projects together. And so I think that it's pretty clear that if you support the lodge, then you are also supporting the hospice, and that means also agreeing to support financially the hospice. And that concerns me for the reasons that I have spelled out previously, including in my presentation. It sounds like the hospice could run, in operating costs at well over $1 million a year. Without the provincial support, that cost would fall on the municipalities who agree to fund it. And currently, there is no agreement in place on how that split would look. Like Wheatland and Area Hospice's own literature has indicated that it could be split on a per capita basis, which means that we would be on the hook for 2/3 of that over $1 million cost per year. So I'm not, and again, like the province has already agreed to fund a hospice. So are we telling them that we don't want the hospice that they're agreeing to fund? Are we telling them that we want to fund our own hospice? So I'm just, I'm not, I feel like the province, like we kind of, we knocked and they answered, and now we're saying, not that way. Or we don't appreciate what you've kind of agreed to do here for our community. So I guess, there's too many unknowns with this whole project, and that's why I've been asking questions. I've been asking questions for years, and then all of a sudden, I ask a bunch of questions, and then all of a sudden, a letter of support is sprung on us, prematurely, I'll say. My take is that there are people that are interested in getting this project to a certain point where it'll be too late to back out, and at that point, we're going to find out the true cost to the taxpayers, and we're going to go, well, who could have seen this coming, and we're gonna kind of hold our hands up and go like this is so surprising, but maybe I could be wrong, okay, and that's why I'll be putting forward a motion right after this to ask administration to, since the when I put together a presentation using the exact figures from Wheatland and Area Hospice Society and from the consultant hired by Wheatland Housing, I used those figures and I came up with some kind of, estimates of what the implications could be for the community. And I was told that those were totally out of whack. So I'm sure that this council will be more than willing to support my motion that'll be coming to ask administration to show us the true numbers, the true implications for the budget for these projects. But honestly, as much as I support seniors housing, and providing affordable, good quality housing to seniors who need it, and to the point where I've in my own personal time and using my own personal resources, I've researched and gone around touring and looked at different models and types of seniors housing, so that I'm better informed about these things. So it's not about not wanting to do what's right or not wanting to support affordable seniors housing. I don't like walking. I was burned really badly. When I say I was burned, with this, the town office building, I feel responsible, I guess, because I put the community in a position that it turned out not to be what we thought it was going to be. And so I want to make sure that going into any sort of major projects going forward, or even medium projects, that we are totally aware of what we're getting into. I don't think we're there yet with this project and these letters of support. I think they're premature. So unfortunately, I have to, I'm going to have to not support this letter of support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to state that Dr. McNeely did mention that 6 beds for hospice is not enough for this area. And in your presentation, she corrected your numbers on 2 pages and said they were, the figures were 0 instead of 145,000. Councillor Lang.
If I could actually address that. So actually, what she was talking about there, she was actually referring the 145,000. That was actually what the current lodge costs us. So when she says that should be 0, I mean, like, she's arguing against what Wheatland Housing lost for the current lodge on the previous year. So I don't think she actually knew, with all respect to Dr. McNeely and the work she's done, I don't think she quite knew what she was talking about with regards to that. And then as far as, how much the area needs for hospice beds, so the Canadian Cancer Society is the one that says, that an area, should have around 7.7 beds per 100,000, which for our region of, 25,000 people roughly, that should be about 3 beds. And so it's not me that's trying to argue against, and also, there was, again, there was a comment made that, because the province is funding us with 6 beds, therefore, they were throwing out the formula that they actually, they strive to achieve, which their own formula is 7 beds per 100,000. I don't think it's correct to say that just because the province is giving us more beds than what their formula, would suggest is kind of the target, that all of a sudden they're saying that, we need 25 beds or something like that, which is what was suggested. There was some confusion, it seemed, about the situation, I would say. There was no confusion about my presentation. I know my presentation well, and I know the numbers well. And so the confusion was not on my part.
No, of course
Thank
not.
you.
Thank you. Councillor Langmaid, and then Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Worship. I just have to disagree that on just a few points here, and I just want to kind of say my piece. I don't believe that this letter of support is premature. In fact, I believe we are the last ones to sign. So I don't think that this is premature at all. I think, in fact, we are last. Again, these comments about on the hook for hospice funding, on the hook for this, we're not on the hook for anything. It would have to come back for another decision. We're not approving that they can charge us whatever they want, whenever they want. It would need to come back to council. We're not on the hook for that. And then there was a comment about these projects being married together for whatever reason. I also just want to say, I don't want to say they're married together. These are 2 organizations that have partnered. They've partnered to provide increased services to the residents that they host. And that partnerships are something that we talk about a lot as a council, and something that we agree should be pursued and are beneficial for residents, beneficial for the town, and beneficial for the organizations involved. So this isn't a married together for whatever reason. This is a partnership. And finally, I want to make this one point about, because it keeps coming up, how we got burned by the town hall. Now, I wasn't on council when that happened, so my experience with it, I'll admit, is limited. However, I do want to point out one big difference between the town hall project and the lodge project, and that's that the town hall was a Town of Strathmore project. We were wholly responsible for that project. That was council's project. This is not council's project, the lodge. This is Wheatland Housing Management Body's project. And if there's a funding shortfall, I would argue that problem lands on the Wheatland Housing Management Body, not on Strathmore. We can consider if we may wish to support them through that shortfall. But I have read, seen, and heard nothing that we would be absolutely required to fund that shortfall unless it is an operating shortfall, which would be covered by the affordable housing. But on that point, I think past history is the best predictor of future performance. I haven't had any issues or noticed any issues with Wheatland Housing Management Body in the past. I think their rates have been reasonable. I think, speaking to the seniors that live in the lodge in town, they're happy with the level of service that they're receiving. They're excited about this new project. I'm not sure why. I'm confused why we're so concerned that this project could go off the rails when this organization has proved over the last, and correct me if I'm wrong, about 60 years that they can operate efficiently, that they can operate responsibly, and that they do provide a necessary service to our town. That to me says everything. Yes, there is risk to this project. There's risk to every project. And I understand that that's scary, and none of us want to be able to shoulder a project that goes sideways. But there's no risk-free project. So if council is looking for something that has no risk, you're not going to find it anywhere. It doesn't exist.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson, then Councillor Wegener.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to ask Councillor Montgomery, it's my recollection that in these chambers, Councillor Montgomery, in the presence of Dr. McNeely, and again at the Wheatland and Area Hospice Society presentation on April 12th, 24 at the Civic Center, that you indicated that you fully supported the hospice project of Wheatland and Area Hospice Society. I think you recorded that meeting. And certainly ours in chambers was recorded when you said to her that you supported the hospice.
Councillor Wegener?
Oh, I wasn't done. You were.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Peterson.
I asked that as a question of Councillor Montgomery.
Oh, yeah, I'd be happy to address that. So, anytime like new information comes to light or circumstances change, I think it's probably reasonable that we get to reassess our position. Now, I actually am fully in support of the hospice. Well, I'm fully in support of a hospice, first of all, which the province has agreed to contract and fund a hospice in our community. It's unfortunate that it's not the Wheatland and Area Hospice group that have been working, just because of, they've been working very hard. I have all the respect in the world for everything that they and all their supporters have accomplished. I told you I personally donated it to it myself. But circumstances kind of have changed, okay? And so, you know what? And if they can guarantee that the town will not have to contribute any money at all, then I have no issue whatsoever with them, setting up in the community. That's totally fine. My concern is, as a councillor for the town of Strathmore, my concern is the pocketbook of the town and the pocketbook of the taxpayers. And so when I understand that there is a hospice coming to the community that's going to be funded by the province, and we are turning around and saying we support an additional hospice, I think we are setting ourselves up to be obligated to fund that hospice. To Councillor Langmaid's point, this has been brought up a couple of times tonight by different people, but it's like, oh, we've agreed to support such and such. Therefore, why are we having this discussion even? So I look forward to, I guess, the discussion where the hospice is coming to us for operational money if this goes ahead. And I'm, I or whoever's on the next council is being told, well, you know what? The last council supported the hospice. So, don't even bother debating whether we're going to give them the money because, a previous council already said they support it. So, stop wasting time and let's just get behind this thing. I guess, I hope that answers your question anyways.
Thank you.
To follow up, Your Worship, first of all, there is nothing new in the presentations from Wheatland and Area Hospice Society. Secondly, the hospice may come to us for funding, but they've been very clear as to what the province is doing. That is in the April 12th, Our Hospice, the build, and they outline what is currently happening in the province with regards to other hospices that were privately built and the funding formulas that are undertaken by the province, but there is no guarantee. So there is just like in pre-COVID, when Councillor Montgomery, along with the rest of the existing council, voted in favor of the tacit approval of per capita funding, as did every other municipality in our region. Every single municipality. And I want to say again, nothing has changed with Wheatland and Area Hospice, except that they've increased the database that they carry, and they have increased the amount of funding that ensures capital funding, full capital funding for the project. And as Dr. McNeely said in this room when she was pointing out the errors in Councillor Montgomery's presentation, that AHS planned to have 7.7 beds per $100,000 population. 7.7 beds per 100,000. But in 2023, it was 2.1. And if I recall correctly, she said that in British Columbia, it was 8.4 per 100,000. She went on to talk about the tragic consequences of people who live in rural areas like ours, because we're not just talking about Strathmore. We're talking about Hazard and people on the far reaches of our diaspora, and that families have to travel considerable distance for rural patients. And so when those patients have to go to hospices in Calgary to die, that is very, very difficult. She also talked about how AHS has been repeatedly called out by national palliative care experts for labeling existing beds as hospice when they might more appropriately be called beds at the end of the hall, because they have little to offer in the way of hospice services, which have a designated wraparound service. So the group that has raised, and I want to say this again, $4.1 million has definitely considered every single possible aspect. And to say that Joni McNeely does not know what she's talking about is a bit difficult to accept. I also just want to say in relation to Councillor Wiley's comment about receiving a lot of concerns on the project itself. I have received a few, but really respectful questions asking reasoning why and around the why. I want to acknowledge the good work that the town, that Wheatland Hospice and Wheatland Housing, Councillor Lang made, have contributed to the conversation in terms of clarification. And I want to say that in all of the consultations that Councillor Wagner and I have been a part of over the past 3 years, the overwhelming support has been demonstrated. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Wegener.
Just a couple little things. I mean, it's been beat up quite a bit here, but right now we're just on the motion that Mayor Few will sign the letter of support. We have sent a letter of support to Minister Nixon that had conditions on it. I believe it probably passed unanimously. So what we're looking at here now is the same letter of support with the conditions removed. All it's saying is that the town of Strathmore, expresses full support of the lodge. It goes on to talk a little bit of history about the lodge and the 120-bed unit. We're not asking for funding. There are off-ramps as we go through this whole process. There's times where we can jump out if stuff goes wrong. This is a letter of support to the government, showing our support for the build. There is no extra money other than the $200,000 as was mentioned, because this money has all been approved. And one of the comments about Shasta Care and for-profit lodges, we have a lot of seniors here that are on low income or no income almost. These for-profit lodges, now they're funding models on the ones that I'm aware of. My mom used to live in one in Calgary, anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000 a month for their room and accommodations. I don't know what Shasta's modeling, price modeling is, but for profit generally means quite a bit higher. We have people that can barely afford to live in the Wheatland Lodge as it is with subsidized rents. There's no way that they would be able to afford something like this. So again, I do support the seniors, I do support the lodge, and again, that's all this letter is just a letter of support for the mayor to sign.
So we have a motion on the floor to authorize Mayor Fuel to sign the Wheatland Housing Management Letter of Support concerning the new lodge. Any further discussion? Councillor Wigener?
Can I get a recorded vote when we vote?
Thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. We have a carried vote of 5-2, and I was negligent in mentioning that the last motion was also carried 5-2. So we're going to go on, I think, to Councillor Montgomery. He's emailed us, but I'm wondering if we could take a quick recess. Can someone put a motion on the floor? Councillor Langmaid?
Your Worship, I would request that we take a brief 8-minute recess for a bio break.
All in favor?
Well, there's a motion on the floor. Can we discuss?
We just passed the
I
motion.
don't believe a motion for a recess is actually debatable.
Yeah, we have a motion on the floor that just passed the letter of support. Is that what you mean, Deputy Mayor?
No, in reference to the break.
Oh. So, okay, so I'll call the question. There's no debating a motion to recess. All in favor? Opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. The motion is carried. We will recess until 9 p.m.